Storydepths presents audiobook of the Curators Series, Book 1, Zephy Awakening by Kennard. You are listening to Episode 2 from Zephy Awakening. Click on the playlist to listen to previous episodes. All rights reserved.
Lena, evacuating on the hill. From my vantage point on hill, I could see entire town laid out below me. The rising tsunami filled the air with a deafening roar. My heart raced with fear and uncertainty. People around me were crying, clutching their loved ones. All eyes glued to the approaching disaster, but I couldn't focus on them. My mind was fixated on one thing: Zephy. He hadn't evacuated his cottage. While everyone else had hurried to the designated safe area, I'd seen him stay behind with Rex. I couldn't fathom why he would risk his life like that. Anxiety gnawed at me. I strained my eyes, hoping to catch a glimpse of him through the chaos. The waves surged towards the coast. My breath caught in my throat. The water crashed into the town with a force that shook the ground, even up here on hill. The destruction was immediate, overwhelming. Houses were swallowed by the relentless waves. Everything familiar was transformed into a scene of devastation. Then something miraculous happened. Amidst chaos and destruction, I saw Zephy's cottage. My eyes widened in disbelief. Water was raging all around it, but his home stood firm, untouched by tsunami. It was as if an invisible force had created shield, protecting it from devastation that engulfed everything else. "Lena, do you see that?" Someone beside me shouted, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the scene. Zephy's cottage, standing alone in sea of destruction, was a sight that defied explanation. Relief flooded through me, but it was tinged with confusion and awe. How was this possible? Why was his home spared when everything else was consumed? "Aunt Mary, I need to go check on Zephy," I said, my voice shaking but determined. "He didn't evacuate. I need to make sure he's all right." "Be careful, Lena." Her eyes filled with worry. "But go. He might need help." As soon as it was safe to descend, I made my way downhill, each step filled with urgency. The path was littered with debris. The aftermath of the tsunami was evident everywhere I looked. But my focus remained on Zephy's untouched cottage, a beacon of hope amidst destruction. When I finally reached town, contrast was stark. Houses were reduced to rubble, streets turned into rivers, but there amidst wreckage stood Zephy's cottage, pristine and untouched. I rushed towards it, my heart pounded. "Zephy, Zephy, are you there?" I called out, my voice trembling with worry. Door opened. There he was standing in doorway with Rex by his side. Relief and disbelief washed over me. I hurried forward. "Lena," he said. His voice was calm and steady despite chaos around us. "You're safe." "Zephy, how is this possible? The tsunami, it didn't touch your place at all." He glanced around, a look of calm acceptance on his face. "I don't know, Lena. It's like something protected us." I shook my head, still trying to process what I was seeing. "It's incredible. Everything else is destroyed. But your cottage, it's like it was shielded." He nodded, looking out at wreckage surrounding his untouched home. "Yeah, it is." As I stood there with Zephy and Rex, the strangeness of situations settled in. There was something extraordinary about this place and about him. Whatever has happened, it felt like a sign, a message that there were greater forces at play. The town began to recover from disaster.
Zephy, being considered brang. We stood outside the cottage, taking in the devastation caused by the tsunami. "Lena," I said, my voice tinged with confusion and concern. "Why did you take such a life-threatening risk just to see if I was okay? No one's ever done that for me." She looked at me with eyes soft and earnest. "I acted without thinking, Zephy. I was only concerned about you. Didn't think about the aftermath or danger." I could see sincerity in her eyes, but even though my house was untouched by tsunami, there was still possibility that water could have come inside. "You didn't know what you might find." "I know." She glanced around at the untouched walls of my cottage. "But I had to make sure you and Rex were safe. Couldn't just stand by and do nothing." Her words struck chord in me. The idea that someone would care enough to risk their safety just to check on me was foreign. Overwhelming. I felt a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "Well, I'm glad you did," I said softly. "It means a lot." He smiled, a hint of relief in her expression. "I'm just glad you're both okay." Rex wagged his tail, sensing calm between us. As we stood there in aftermath of disaster, I realized maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I had always thought. Standing beside Lena, observing the aftermath of the disaster, I couldn't help but question what I was seeing. The town lay in ruins, debris scattered everywhere, and yet my cottage stood untouched. How was it possible that my home had been protected against force as powerful as a tsunami? This isn't normal, I muttered to myself, my mind racing. There isn't anything powerful enough to stop force like that. Lena glanced at me, her eyes filled with curiosity and concern. What are you thinking, Zephy? I shook my head, still trying to wrap my mind around the impossibility of it all. I don't understand how my cottage could be completely safe when everything else was devastated. It's like there was some kind of shield protecting it. She looked around, taking in contrast between untouched cottage and wreckage surrounding it. It does seem like a miracle, she said softly. Maybe there's more to this place than we realize. I nodded, but my thoughts were a whirlwind. This wasn't just luck, a coincidence. Something had happened here. Something beyond my understanding. As I stood there with Lena, reality of situation settled in. I knew I needed to find answers. Whatever had protected my cottage from tsunami was extraordinary. Couldn't ignore it. Rex nuzzled my hand, grounding me in moment. I looked down at him, and then back at Lena. Whatever it is, we're safe, and that's what matters right now. She nodded, reassuring smile on her face. We'll figure it out together, Zephy. One step at a time. As we stood there, I felt a strange mix of gratitude and curiosity. My life in Kit's hammock had always been simple and predictable, but now it was clear something bigger was at play. And with Lena by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. Lena decided to stay with her aunt until everything was back to normal. To my surprise, I was happy about it. I'd never felt close connection with anyone before. Something about Lena made me feel different. The idea of seeing her every day brought a sense of anticipation I wasn't used to. Each morning, I found myself looking forward to her visits at the garage. The aftermath of disaster meant that a lot of cars were coming in for repair. Workload was heavy, but I didn't mind. Lena started spending more time at garage. She was eager to learn and help out. First, she watched me work. She asked questions about what I was doing. I was impressed by her curiosity and willingness to get her hands dirty. Before long, she was rolling up her sleeves, diving into the repairs with me. She picked up the basics quickly, and her enthusiasm was contagious. One afternoon, as we were working on a particularly battered sedan, she turned to me with a smudge of grease on her cheek. You know, I never thought I'd enjoy this kind of work, but it's actually kind of fun. I smiled, handing her wrench. It has its moments. There's something satisfying about taking something broken and making it work again. She nodded, tightened a bolt. I can see that, and it's nice to feel useful, especially after everything that's happened. We continued working in companionable silence. Having her around made the long hours more bearable. I realized how much I enjoyed her company. Rex seemed to like having her around too. He often lounged nearby, kept a watchful eye on us. In the evenings after garage closed, Lena and I would often sit outside cottage, watch the sun set over the ocean. We talked about everything and nothing, shared stories about our lives and our hopes for the future. During these quiet moments, I felt the bond between us grow stronger. One night as we sat on the porch, she turned to me with thoughtful expression. You know, Zephy, I'm really glad I stayed. I feel like I've found something here. Something I didn't even know I was looking for. I looked at her, feeling warmth spread through me. I'm glad you stayed too, Lena. You've brought something to my life that I didn't know I was missing. She smiled, and for a moment everything felt right. Despite chaos and destruction that had brought us together, we had found a sense of peace and purpose in each other's company. As days passed and town slowly began to recover, our routine at garage continued. Lena became more skilled each passing day. We worked seamlessly as a team. It wasn't just about fixing cars anymore. It was about building something together, something lasting. I knew, deep down, that Lena would be leaving for city soon. She had her career to finish. I understood that town life wasn't for her. Still, thought of her departure left a hollow feeling in my chest. We had built something special during these days. Our routine at garage, quiet evenings on porch, the shared laughter and stories. It all meant more to me than I could easily express. I had grown accustomed to her presence. The idea of returning to my solitary life was daunting. One afternoon, as we were wrapping up for day, Lena wiped her hands on a rag. She looked at me with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "Zephy, we need to talk." I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. Yeah, I figured this was coming. We sat down on a couple old stools in garage, Rex lying faithfully by our feet. Lena took a deep breath before speaking. "I have to go back to city soon. My career, my life, all there. I can't stay here forever." "I know," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've known this day would come. Just didn't want to think about it." She reached out and took my hand, her grip firm and warm. "These past weeks have meant so much to me, Zephy. You've shown me side of life I never knew I needed. But I have responsibilities I can't ignore." I nodded, swallowing hard. "I understand, Lena. Really, I do. And I'm grateful for every moment we've had together." She smiled, a bittersweet expression that tugged at my heart. "I'll visit whenever I can. And you could always come visit me in the city." I shook my head, smiling faintly. "City life isn't for me, Lena. I belong here in Kit's hammock, with Rex in my garage." She nodded, accepting my answer. "I know, but promise me you'll take care of yourself, okay?" "I will, I promise. And you take care of yourself too. Don't forget about little town by the sea." "I won't," she said, her voice soft. Could never forget. The next few days passed too quickly, each moment tinged with knowledge of her impending departure. We continued to work side by side, cherishing the time we had left. On her last evening, we sat on the porch as the sun set, sky ablaze with colors. "This place," she said, looking out at ocean, "always be special to me." "And you'll always be special to me," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. We sat in silence. The weight of goodbye hung heavy in air. When time came for her to leave, I walked her to her car, Rex trotting beside us. She turned to me one last time, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Goodbye, Zephy," she said, her voice breaking. "Goodbye, Lena," I replied. My heart ached. She leaned in and kissed my cheek, then got into her car. Drove away. I stood there watching until her car disappeared from view, feeling profound sense of loss. Rex nudged my hand, offering silent comfort. I looked down at him and sighed. "Well, buddy, it's just us again." As we walked back to cottage, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed. Lena had brought light and warmth into my life. Even though she was gone, the impact of her presence remained. I would continue to live my simple life, but now I carried with me the memories. Memories of our time together. A reminder that even in solitude, connections could be made. Hearts could be touched. After Lena left, the days seemed quieter, emptier. I went about my usual routine, fixing cars. Bedtime with Rex. The thought of the tsunami and why my cottage had remained untouched lingered in my mind. One evening, as the sun dipped below horizon, casting long shadows across the yard, I looked down at Rex, who was sitting by my side. "Rex, let's go investigate the coast in front of our cottage. We need to figure out why our place was unaffected. Maybe there was big rock or something that saved us." Rex wagged his tail in response, as if he understood the importance of our mission. Together, we made our way down to the shoreline. The sound of the waves crashing against the sand was soothing, but I couldn't shake the nagging curiosity that had taken hold of me. We walked along coast, scanning the area in front of the cottage. I half expected to find a large rock formation or some other natural barrier that could have deflected the tsunami's force. But as we continued our search, it became clear that there was nothing out of the ordinary. The coast was clear and normal, just like it had always been. No hidden rocks, no unusual formations, nothing that could explain why my cottage had been spared. I crouched down, running my fingers through sand, trying to make sense of it all. "How could this be, Rex?" I muttered, more to myself than to him. "There's nothing here, no reason why we were protected." Rex sat beside me, his eyes reflecting the fading light of the day. He seemed calm, as if he had already accepted what I was struggling to understand. I patted his head, feeling a mixture of frustration and awe. "Maybe it was just a miracle," I said softly, standing, and looked out at the horizon. "Something we can't explain." We stood there for a while, watching the waves roll in and out, the rhythm of ocean steady and constant. Despite the unanswered questions, a sense of peace settled over me. I might never know why our cottage was spared, but I realized that sometimes it was enough to simply be grateful for what we had. Come on, Ray, I said, turning back towards the cottage. Let's head home. The year after Lena left was a blur. Days spent in the garage fixing cars and talking to strange customers who came through. Without phone or laptop, I had no way of keeping in touch with her. I'm past. The memories of those days we shared together became like faint outlines of a dream. Something I could feel but couldn't quite grasp. One day, I was elbow deep in the engine of an old pickup truck. I heard the familiar sound of car pulling into the garage, wiped my hands on a rag, looked up just as Rex bolted towards the visitor, his tail wagging furiously. I was about to call him back when I saw a young woman step out of the car. "Hey, Zephy," she called out, her voice bright and hopeful. I squinted, trying to place her face, but nothing came to mind. "Hello," I said cautiously, glancing at Rex, who was now circling her excitedly. "Can I help you with something?" Woman's smile faltered slightly. "It's me, Lena. We met during tsunami last year, remember?" I shook my head, feeling a pang of frustration. "I'm sorry, but I don't remember you. Are you sure you've got the right person?" Her eyes widened with surprise and hurt. "Zephy, we spent weeks together. I helped you in garage. We sat on your porch and watched sunsets," called Rex back. He reluctantly returned to my side, still wagging his tail. "Look, I meet a lot of people. I'm really sorry, but I just don't remember." Lena stood there, her expression a mix of shock and disappointment. "How could you forget? I thought we were friends." I shrugged helplessly. "Maybe it's because I don't have phone or computer to keep in touch. Time goes by, things get fuzzy. I'm really sorry." She took deep breath, clearly trying to process situation. "I understand, I guess, but it's hard to believe you could forget everything we went through." I felt a strange sense of loss, knowing that I had somehow forgotten someone who clearly meant a lot to me. "Maybe you can tell me more about it. Sometimes talking about things can help jog my memory." Lena nodded slowly, a glimmer of hope returning to her eyes. "Okay, I'll try. Do you have some time now?" "Yeah, I do," I replied, gesturing to a couple of stools near the workbench. "Let's sit down and talk." As I sat across from Lena, I listened as she recounted events of past year. We spoke about tsunami, time we spent together, and bond we formed. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember any of it. It was like trying to grasp smoke with my hands. Everything just slipped away. Lena's voice was filled with emotion, but her words didn't spark any memories. I felt a deep sense of frustration and helplessness. "I'm really sorry, Lena," I said, shaking my head. "I don't remember any of it. Not the tsunami, not you helping me in garage, nothing." She looked at me with a mix of sadness and confusion. "How can that be, Zephy? We were so close, it's like you've completely forgotten a whole part of your life." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I don't know. Maybe it's some kind of condition. If things or people aren't part of my daily routine, I just forget them." Lena's eyes widened. "You mean you have no memory of tsunami at all?" "No," I admitted, feeling a pang of guilt. "It's like it never happened. The only thing I remember is fixing cars. That's always been constant in my life." She sat back, trying to process what I had told her. "But that's not all, Zephy. I've noticed something else. You look exactly same as you did years ago, not a single change in your appearance. That's not normal." I looked at her puzzled. "What do you mean? I feel same as I always have." She shook her head, her expression serious. "People age, Zephy. They change. But you're like frozen in time. It's like you're not affected by years passing by." Her words unsettled me. I had never given much thought to my appearance or how others perceived me. My life had always been about routines and steady rhythm of work. But now, hearing her say it, I realized there might be something more to my existence that I had never considered. "I don't know what to say," I finally responded. "Maybe there's something about me that I don't understand, but it doesn't change the fact that I can't remember anything you've told me." Lena sighed, looking down at her hands. "I guess there's nothing we can do about it now. I just wanted to see you again, to try to reconnect." "I appreciate that," I said softly, "and I'm sorry that I don't remember. But maybe we can start fresh, get to know each other again." She looked up, a small smile playing on her lips. "I'd like that, Zephy." As we sat there, garage filled with familiar sounds of tools and engines, I felt a strange sense of hope. Maybe I couldn't remember past, but I could still build a future. One day at a time. And perhaps with Lena's help, I could begin to understand mysteries of my life and forces that shaped it. Since I remembered nothing at all about Lena, I fell back on a very simple question. So, what brings you back to town? She sighed, and her expression seemed to suddenly soften. I'm visiting my aunt. She's been feeling pretty sick lately, and I wanted to spend some time with her. Then I've got one more year to go for graduating, but I'm just going to move here in Kit's hammock. The city life? It's just not cut out for me. I nodded, taking it all in. Oh, I see. How's your aunt doing now? She's stable, but it's been tough, Lena replied. She's all the family I have now. My parents died 12 years ago. I felt the empathy well up inside me at this. I am so sorry, Lena. That must have been really difficult for you. She nodded, her eyes far away. It was, but my aunt's been here for me through everything. I owe her a lot, and that's the other reason I want to be here in this town. This feels more like home than anywhere else could. I turned toward her, bound to her despite the holes in my memory. You've been through so much. If there is any way that I can help, let me know. She smiled warmly. Thank you, Zephy. It really means a lot. We went on talking, and though I had no memory of our history, I felt an increasing sense of recognition and comfort with her. She told me more of her plans and about her studies, dreams of a quieter, simpler life up here in Kit's hammock. As the day began to go by, Lena started contributing to the garage. Particularly, it was natural. Easy, like slipping into some old rhythm. And with my memories of her gone, we're making something new. And that gave me hope and possibility. Yet perhaps something in me hadn't remembered the past. But I could feel a future in which Lena and I were friends, indeed, supporting each other through life's messy bits. And perhaps with time, some of those lost memories would find their way back. For now, though, it was enough to know that we forged a new connection. One that seemed to have just as much meaning as the one I forgot. One afternoon, while Lena and I were working on a particularly stubborn car, she paused and wiped her hands on a rag, looking at me curiously. Zephy, can I ask you something? I laid the wrench down and nodded. Sure, what's on your mind? I've never heard you talk about your family, and I've never seen any pictures or anything, she said softly. Do you have any family? I looked at her, and again the emptiness seemed to well up. I don't remember anything about my family, I confessed. The only things I know are this garage, my mechanical skills, and my cottage. That's it. Lena looked absolutely astounded. You don't remember anything? Not even your childhood? I shook my head. No, it's all a blank. I found Rex near the garage one day and adopted him. He's been my only companion ever since. She frowned, brow furrowed with concern. But don't you have any records? An ID card, a bank statement, anything? I sighed, rubbing the back of my neck. No, I don't have any of that. Lena stared at me, a mixture of disbelief and sympathy suffusing her features. That's really weird, Zephy. Have you ever tried finding out more about your past? I shrugged. I wouldn't know where to start. I've just accepted it as it is. My life revolves only around this garage, my cottage, and Rex. That's all I've ever known. She was quiet for a bit before speaking softly. That must be hard, not knowing anything about where you came from. I met her gaze. My eyes widened a little at the vulnerability. It is sometimes. But I've learned how to live with it. I focus on what I can do, what I can fix. That's enough of a reason to keep going. Lena put out a hand, lightly touching my arm. If you ever want to try and figure out what happened, I'd be happy to help. I smiled, moved by her gesture. Thanks, Lena. Maybe someday, but for now, I'm content with what I have. She nodded her head a bit, her eyes softening a little. All right. Just know that you're not alone, Zephy. You have people who care for you. Her words warmed my heart, and for a moment, the emptiness inside did not feel so overwhelming. Thanks, Lena. That means so much. We returned to work, but the conversation lingered in my mind. Lena's arrival had ushered new questions and possibilities into my life, although I wasn't ready to delve into the mysteries of my past just yet. But knowing she'd be there when that time came, well, her presence was a comfort. For now, it was enough that I lived in the present, making new memories and having her by my side. Lena invited me for dinner at her aunt's place. It was just 2 streets away from the garage. As we walked, there was some sort of curiosity and anticipation I had experienced. She led me to a small house with a front porch, very small, cozily sized, with some flowers planted that got it all colorful and properly taken care of. My aunt's place is small, but it's perfect for the two of us, she said with a smile as she opened the door. It did turn out that the interior of the house was warm and friendly. The well-furnished look of the living room, crammed with soft light, furniture, and an array of miscellaneous items, seemed to articulate well the general character of inhabitiveness. One of the living room walls was taken up by bookshelves crammed with well-thumbed books. On the rest, photographs of Lena and her aunt from various times in their lives jostled for space. The kitchen was compact, efficient, and efficiently laid out with the tumbling aroma of home-cooked food hanging in the air. "Aunt Mary, we're here," Lena called as we entered. Her aunt came out of the kitchen, still adjusting her spectacles. "Oh, Lena and Zephy, it is so good to see you both," she addressed warmly. She squinted a bit when looking toward me. "I remember you. I visited your garage once. You fixed my old sedan, didn't you?" I nodded, feeling some little stir of recognition, though the memory remained dim. "Yes, I think so, Mary. It's sweet to see you again." Mary straightened her spectacles and squinted at me. "You know what? You look exactly the same as you did before. Not a particle of change. That's amazing." Lena looked over at me. Her face was pensive. "I noticed the same thing, Aunt Mary. It's as if he's absolutely not aging." I shrugged a little, feeling uncomfortable under all of their stare. "I suppose I have just been lucky." Mary chuckled and waved a hand dismissively. "Whatever it is, sure this is an odd one. Come, sit down and have something to eat." We went out to the dining table, which was full of a wonderful assortment of home-cooked food. As we sat for lunch, discussion was on full swing, primarily about the recovery of the town, some shared stories, and a few good laughs, even over some silly incidents that Lena had related from the city. "Aunt Mary, this food is outstanding," I said, genuinely savoring it. "Thanks, Zephy," she submitted, sweetly smiling. "Glad that you liked it. Feels good to have somebody around." I did not remember being myself so much at home. It wasn't quite familiar to my taste, kept me warm. I made her and her aunt feel like I belonged to them, even just for one night. As dinner began to slow to a close, Mary leaned back in her chair, looking content. "This has been such a lovely evening. I'm so glad you could join us, Zephy." "Me too," I said sincerely. "Thank you for having me." Lena escorted me to the door when I was leaving. "Thanks for coming, Zephy. It means so much to me and my aunt." "Thank you for inviting me," I said. It was an amazing evening. As I walked back to my cottage, I felt this glow in my heart. The evening had been more than just another meal. It was a reminder that even in my solitary life, I could still make connection.
This was episode 2 from the Curators Series, Book 1, Zephy Awakening by Kennard. Available only on StoryDepths YouTube channel. Click on the playlist to listen to other episodes.